Hey kids, welcome back to the video notes. We're going to be talking more about Mesoamerican tribes. Today we're going to be talking about the Aztecs. Hopefully if my computer, there we go. So here I just have a basic timeline. Here at 1195, the Aztecs move into the Valley of Mexico. So the Aztecs were located pretty much entirely in Mexico. And over here, 1502, is Montezuma becomes the ruler, and that's the end of the empire. So it's about 300, 400 years. You can look at all these other ones. Government-wise, they had a king or an emperor. They were in city-states, so once again, think about like the states in the United States and how there's a federal government that everything goes to. The states paid tribute, that could be in money or food or anything else that the emperor wanted. The emperor was completely independent. He didn't really answer to anybody. He was always doing his own thing. Once again, on the names, I'm going to try my best. I might say them wrong. Please forgive me. Doing my best. Acampechtelli was the first emperor of the Aztec, and Moctezuma II was the ninth and last emperor. And he was the leader when Cortez came. And we talked about Cortez when we talked about explorers. So this was the government before he got there, the people before he came. So the government, there was the king, and then there were generals and priests that were also high-ranking and had a lot of importance. They had a code of law, so they had laws against stealing, murder, and property damage. They had their own system of courts and judges, so they had their own sort of justice system. What was interesting about the Aztecs is they had something called the one-time forgiveness law. It meant that if you confessed to a priest before you were caught for doing the crime, you could be cleared of the charges, but you could only do it once. So if I stole something and I went to the priest and was like, hey, I stole this thing, the priest would be like, okay, if you want to, we can give you the one-time forgiveness law, but you can never do anything bad again. Social structures. They were organized into kapuli, which were these small clans or tribes, think like 30 to 40 people, so kind of a bunch of families together. As a kapuli, they owned land, so no one person owned land, they owned land together. These kapulis had their own chiefs, schools, and trades that they specialized in. So maybe they made pottery, maybe they grew a specific plant. Depends on what their specialization was. They had kings, city leaders, so it went king, city leaders, so governors, things like that, nobles, traders, regular people, and then at the very bottom was slaves. They were the base. Absolute bottom is slaves. Wealthy people lived in stone houses, poor people lived in huts, and all children had to go to school. So even if you lived in ancient times with the Aztecs, you'd still be in school learning something. What can you do? This is just a video about what it was like to be a kid in the Aztecs. Religion. So the Aztecs worshipped the sun. They were called the people of the sun because they worshipped the sun so much. They believed that in order for the sun to rise every day, it needed a blood sacrifice. It needed human blood for it to gain strength. So they believed the sun was pushed up by the god of the sun, Quetzalcoatl. He was the god of the sun, war, and sacrifice. So they believed that he needed human blood to power him to push the sun up. And if they stopped giving him human sacrifices, the sun wouldn't rise. They also had Tlaloc, who's the god of rain and water, and Quetzalcoatl, who's the god of life and wind. That's this guy up here. He's a winged serpent, so he's a snake with feathers, and he flies, and he looks really cool. They had levels of heaven and the underworld. How you die determined where you go. So if you had died in battle, you would usually start in the top tier of heaven. Technology. When we're looking at technology, they wrote in pictographs, which is up here. So that's pictures. So no words, just pictures. The language they spoke was called Natul. They had calendars, which is what this is, a big stone calendar. And they had aqueducts. Aqueducts were these ramps that brought water into the city, which is a pretty advanced thing. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that and talk a little bit more about that later on this week. So I won't go super in depth into that. Agriculture. Their main food was maize, which we would call corn, beans, squash, cocoa beans, insects, and fish. For medicine, they had these really unique things, these unique structures that were called steam baths that allowed you to like sweat out what they called impurities. So like sweat out the sickness, if you've ever heard that. And they had chinampas, which were these man-made islands used for farming. So they basically would build an island and then farm on it. And that goes into their their main city, which was called Tenochtitlan. And Tenochtitlan is actually Mexico City today. So Mexico City was built on top of the ancient ruins of Tenochtitlan. And I'll probably get a little more into that later. We'll talk about it a little bit more. And that's all for the Aztec Notes. Make sure that you are answering the questions and turning them in so I can see that you are doing this. Please and thank you. We're going to have Inca Notes later this week, and then it's going to be like a documentary I have you watch about the Aztecs, and you're going to have to answer some questions. I look forward to hearing back from you guys. Have a good week. Bye.